Good evening. This is the Auburn Finance Committee. Today is April 9th, 2025. Please allow me to read our remote participation script. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, it's 1-786-535-3211 with an access code of 991-599-357. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda participating remotely are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. Michael Marshall.
Here.
Patrick Jones.
Here.
George Graham.
Here.
Stephen Consilvio.
Here.
And Andrew Shar.
Here.
Thank you. Town officials and employees participating, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. CFO, Town Accountant Karen Harnois.
Here.
And Administrative Assistant Danielle Chamberlain-Roberts.
Here.
Thank you. And I don't think we have any members appearing remotely, so we will not need to do roll call votes. So the first on our agenda this evening is some potential transfers. The first transfer we have coming up is the fire department. We have the deputy chief with us. Chief?
Good evening. Yep, tonight before you, we have a transfer looking for a total of $50,000 to transfer to the overtime line item. That amount will not get us completely to the end of the year. Through the CFO, we're taking a phased-in approach, and we're just going to put a little bit in here and there, but it should last us a good 5 weeks. We've been trending down on overtime since January. It's been going down to about 11,000 a week, and we've seen it lower than that as well. But we'll see it stick around probably that amount moving forward. We do have somebody that's retiring as of today. Is his last day. And then we also have a couple people going to the academy.
Yes, who's retiring?
Mark Johnson has been with us for over 20 years. So,
Questions relative to the transfers before I read them off for the deputy chief? Okay, the first one is coming from the dispatcher's account. The amount requested $25,000 going to the overtime account. Reason given on the transfer to cover overtime expenses to June 30th.
Motion approve. Second.
A motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
The next one is coming from the reserve account. This one is going to the overtime account. Amount requested $25,000. Reason given to cover overtime expenses to June 30th.
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Have a good night.
The next one is DPW. Do we have anybody who wants to discuss this one? Relatively small, but still, I'd give you the option.
Which ones we got?
We'll go with the first one, which is repairs, so that's going to be on you. So
That's on me.
So the first one from interdepartmental transfer, coming from the wages account, my request is $1,200, going to motor vehicle maintenance account, reason given for repairs needed for sewer pickup trucks, S2 and S7.
Okay, so this is for sewer. Yeah, so there's been some maintenance needs for those two trucks. It doesn't look like we're gonna have enough in the account for those. So I got an estimate from our head mechanic, and that should cover those costs, plus a little bit of contingency.
That account, are we going to see just more of these as you get issues come up over the next months, or how does the account look in terms of?
So this is for the motor vehicle repair for just the sewer vehicles.
Okay, this is sewer.
This is sewer specific. So it's not quite as significant as some of the other motor vehicle repair accounts that we've talked about and that we're going to talk about in a minute. So yeah, I expect this would get us through the year without some unforeseen, major issue with one of the other vehicles.
Did you want to, while you're there, the other one is from the wages account, $2,000 going to education to cover new sewer employees CDL training costs.
Yeah, we've had a couple new employees this year, so CDL training costs have gone up quite a bit, and they've had to have other training as well that has drawn down that account, so trying to cover for that.
Okay. So the first transfer from the wages, $1,200 going to motor vehicle maintenance. Given, do we have a motion on that one?
Motion to recommend, or motion to approve? Excuse me.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve, all in favor?
Aye.
And.
Motion to approve the second transfer?
Second.
Motion to approve the $2,000 transfer to education, a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And this one's for Packagug Golf Course, from the contingency account. The amount requested $1,000, go to the travel meeting dues account. This line item was not originally funded.
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve that one. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Fleet maintenance as well. This is a larger one. This is motor vehicle, from the motor vehicle repairs fire account. Amount requested $10,000 to go to the motor vehicle repairs DPW account. Reason to replenish the fleet supply account due to unanticipated budget shortfall.
Yeah, so when we were putting together transfers for this meeting, I was hoping that we'd be able to get to the next meeting in May with this account. But we had a bunch of invoices come due. The biggest source of these repairs over the past few weeks has been repairs to two of our sweepers, as well as our catch basin truck that was in disrepair, pretty significant disrepair. We thought we were going to have to sideline that trunk altogether. We were looking at options, but we've recently hired a new mechanic who's been able to work a little bit of magic and get that thing back on the road, but there obviously was some cost involved in that. So those have been sort of the big things with that. As far as these accounts in general, right now, the DPW motor vehicle repair account, I try to forecast those out to the end of the year. I start doing that around November or December because, we seem to be doing this every year. As of right now, I expect that account will probably need around $30,000 by the end of the year, just based off of past year's trends and looking at this year's trends and trying to kind of come up with a model between those two. It could be a little more or less. Right now, the fire motor vehicle repair account looks like it'll be actually under budget by maybe about $20,000. Of course, that is barring any major unforeseen issues with fire. I believe it was last week, the week before, I was here for police. So police is okay for now, but they'll probably need another transfer at some point this year. So I did talk with the fire department to make sure that there's no other major repair needs that they foresee. These things, they sort of pop up on their own sometimes. And we sort of all agreed that this would be a good first step for now. I think this will get us to the end of the month. But at the beginning of May, we'll likely be talking about, I want to see where all the accounts are at that point. We'll probably be talking about DPW again and likely police as well at that point.
Is this one of the disadvantages of seeing as to breaking everything out, whereas before we kind of had everything lumped under one fleet account, so then you were able to pull for different vehicles? Now we're being a little more granular to see where the spending is going, that it's going to cause you to have to come in to transfer money between those accounts?
Yeah, I mean, it is one disadvantage of doing it that way. I think it's a minor disadvantage because I try to stay pretty well ahead of it. And I work well with the other departments, fire and police, to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page as far as what their repair needs are. I think overall it has been a very good improvement, splitting the budgets out like this. It's allowed us to track these things a little bit more closely. It's allowed us to kind of look at a little bit more accountability with each department. Overall, I've been very happy with how it's been going. One side effect is that, yes, I'll have to come to maybe a couple more of these meetings to move money around between the accounts, but so far I'm happy with how it's been going.
Did the message board outside the highway, did that have anything to do with you? Was
That was me.
that you?
Yeah,
That was you? Was that yesterday or today?
that was yesterday.
Yesterday. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
If your employees didn't do enough to embarrass you, I figured we'd do it.
Yeah, I ordered them not to do that.
So we'll be looking for some new employees in fleet maintenance?
Yeah. We'll see.
Any questions relative to this transfer?
Motion approved?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
DDIS from the travel account, amount requested $300 going to miscellaneous supplies. Reason given, supply equipment needed for department staff.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
DDIS from the dues account, amount requested $210, going to the equipment account. Reason given, supplies, equipment needed for department staff.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
DDIS from the travel account, amount requested $530, going to the miscellaneous supplies account again. Reason given, supplies, equipment needed for department staff.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
This one here is from the salary reserve account, going to the town manager clerical. Amount requested $17,382. This is, the reason for the transfer is to cover the cost of the payouts of 2 employee retirements in the town manager's office.
Motion to, oh, go on.
I wanted to comment that during the budget review, this is really just housekeeping because we were all told about this. So I'll second as he.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think that's all of our transfers. Next up on our agenda, there were no transfers that were done by the CFO under 250. We have the DPW budget that we tabled from last week. You want to touch upon that one, where that stands with that?
Sure. So I hope everybody got the spreadsheet that details out the amount that the budget was off, and then I'm just going to go through where the changes were made in order to have everything come back into balance. So when we went through, the DPW facilities budget was off by $67,338. So the DPW director and I went through some of the accounts, and I just want to go through the detail of where we're coming up with the funds for that. So we went through the different budgets, and we're going to reduce the fleet uniforms because there was money in there for an additional employee who was not added, which was $1,000. The highway line painting is being reduced by $7,000. There's a project that will be done over the summer that will be funded through a combination of 25 and 26 budget lines. So that's the amount that can be reduced in that line. Then in maintenance of veterans parks, there's a reduction of $4,000. There are available funds in the FY25 budget to fund the planned electrical repairs at the parks. The next is parks wages. $11,035.48 is going to be paid from the Pappas Recreational Complex revolving account. There's a reduction in the recreation wages. However, those are going to be paid for by the recreation revolving account, $26,939. And we also have been receiving DPU ridership funds for the last several years. The amount of those have accumulated up to $17,363.52. And those are going to be appropriated to offset road repairs. So that's how we propose coming up with the recommended funding of the $67,338.
Questions relative to the adjustments? I guess my question is more, I know Michael caught the error, but how did the error occur? There was changes in the budget, am I correct, relative to the way we were moving stuff around between? How did it occur, and, I guess moving forward, how do we make sure?
Right. It was in the salary section. There was some wages that I believe were moved from, and correct me if I'm wrong, from highway, in between highway and facilities. So a line was entered in there, and these spreadsheets are in Excel. So for whatever reason, that bottom formula wasn't just a sum of that column, it was a sum of like the first cell and the third cell, so it just got overlooked, unfortunately, in there. We'll just make sure going forward that either we protect, the formulas in there, or we'll make sure that we check them all before they go forward. in the future.
Anything to add to that?
So, yeah, so like Karen said, we had the salary, the wages account, the majority of the wages have the summation formula in there. This was just picked, equal to this cell, this cell, this cell. So when I inserted the line item for the wages, I didn't realize that it was a summation, it wasn't a summation, it was individual cells that were being added. Because that line item was not there previously.
Patrick?
That would lead me to the question I was debating on whether to ask on the integrity of the sheets that are being used. Is there a check and balance system in place so that as we go year to year and these are being used at every department, even though their sheet might be a little different, the methodology or the approach to doing the sheet is tested and checked, so that way we don't have it, because you can check it in the future, but you can still make the mistake in the future. It sounds to me that there's a lot of different ways that this could have happened, and I'm more concerned about the integrity of the process than I am, and I'm not saying that well, I guess it sounds the way it sounds. I'm just concerned that you could have a spreadsheet for DDIS or DPW or any board, and because I do notice, and I made a similar oversight when we were looking at one of the budgets last week, because the template that we received for that budget looks so different because it came from a department that I don't remember whether it was police or fire, but I think one of the things that I've always wanted to spearhead is that at least when the budget book comes to us over time, especially now knowing that it's on Excel, that we should invest some time and effort into fonts and size and all of that, and also to make sure that the formulas are all the same. Because without that check and balance and that going into place, this could have been a $500,000 error. I'm not saying it was, and I'm not implying that that wouldn't have gotten caught, but, it was probably a painful task to go back and find $70,000, and in areas that you were defending to put money into your budget, now you've realized that, it's a tight year, and so you sort of paid a price for doing that, and we were fortunate to find the money. So I would just caution on the air of the integrity of the sheets that we're using. And that's really sort of not a question, it's just a statement, because there are some inconsistencies in these. And it probably won't be the last, and it's not the first time somebody's come before us and the Finance Committee has had the unfortunate opportunity to point out an error. So, and they're far and few in between, I should say that, but they happen. And my goal is for them never to happen. And I don't think that's unrealistic at a time when automation is just taking over the planet. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Andrew?
I also want to go back to a point that was brought up last week about this book in general in Excel. I, find it very hard to believe in 2025, to Patrick's point with automation and where we are, that this is kind of where we are and what we have to use for the committee. I mean, it's pretty hard to kind of go through, all the amendments and all the changes, and I understand that that's maybe not normal. But it would probably be much easier if it was some kind of a Excel sheet, whether it's downloaded to us, shared to us, not obviously, something that we would change, but I work with Excel daily in my budgets, and it's much easier than going back through the paper, spending hours going through. To that point, I think, the process is more the concern. Again, it would obviously help me, but I do think that it lends more clarity and puts more eyes on a concerning thing where you have an error that could be caught prior to. Just my 2 cents on that, so.
I have a more generic question, because, we've got multiple years here. So I'm kind of curious, like, this is showing budgets based on previous year's budgets as opposed to actual, correct?
Those are actuals.
These are actuals.
Yes,
How do
for the-
these
for the
actual-
previous
How do
year.
we get how is the actual getting calculated into the spreadsheet based on past history?
Well, it's coming off of a report from the financial system. So we have to enter it in.
So everything is getting
Yeah.
so the financial system will kick out a report for the year, presumably with all these categories. But then but you have to manually enter that into Excel, is that correct?
Right, for that 1 year, because then the back years will already be there.
Because the financial system won't give you comparisons, or has,
I actually have used Munis budget before in the past. The only thing is it won't give you this many years. So either we can have that and there won't be any, mathematical mistakes in there. We just might have to give some thought as to what we want to see, maybe for next year, if we
Early
want
in
to
the
see
budget
anything
process,
different.
it was stated that we'll see an additional column next year, so they are putting some thought into the presentation on how it comes forward. I would just, again, with adding that column, try to think of standardizing in some way, because, the benefit that we get with Excel is that we could take and look at a lot more information, because if we get it in an Excel sheet, we can extract and go out to the left and variance and so forth and do some additional, calculations, for the lack of a better word to use. But it's a great job. It's not easy to do year after year after year, and your budgets have come before us and they've been great. So this by no means is not a criticism. It's just more an observation and to my peers. And there was a time when all of this had a lot of value, and it still does have a lot of value, but it might help us if we got it in a more automated state going forward. And it may not be next year, it might be a year or two down the road, but I would just make a request that as you go through thinking of how to change the methodology or think about it, that you take some of our feedback into consideration. That's all. Sure. Thank you.
So you're saying Munis doesn't have any capability to do budgeting?
It does, yes, but it won't go back 5 years. I don't remember how many years, but it does give you, I would say maybe 1 or 2 years back, and it will give you the original budget and the adjusted budget. I don't know if it has a column that shows the adjusted or not. But
And
it
it
will
hasn't-
give you, it will give you some information. I'm just not sure it's going to give you as much as you have right now. And it might give you some different ones that you might be looking for.
If I could I've used Munis before in the past, Steve, and one of the things that it fails to do really well is customized programming. So, we're seeing errors in this. If we were to write a custom program for Munis, and then we asked for something like these financials as a board that we could use, as soon as a department changed or a line item got added or something like that, it could very easily send the whole report askew. It's not the most user-friendly software. And also, we pay a lot of money just for the canned reports and a lot of stuff that we get through Munis to just get the support that we did. If we started to customize some of this stuff, it would probably increase our annual expense even more. I have no confidence. I have more confidence in extracting the way we are and being able to do what we do than I would to have it be a custom report.
So is Munis cloud-based, or do we have the software hosted here?
We have I don't know if it's a software as a service. We have it hosted here on the server.
And you literally type in these numbers? You can't just export them and import them? You can't export it as a CSV file or something?
No, you wouldn't be able to get all the information. I
They
mean, you
might do a
could,
VLOOKUP. You might use some formulaic VLOOKUP or something. I don't know that you're typing in manually each number, because I'm sure your totals are summed up. You're not manually keying in. There's a calculation there at some point. So many of these have to be, pre-driven formulas.
right, and that's what we were talking about.
So, yeah,
The
they're not
formulas are in there. It just-
Everything, and there's a lot of predetermined formulas within the spreadsheets that they're using.
Because you built them into the spreadsheet to take an import. But it's still, it seems to me it should be going into a database which Munis basically is a database. So there's this whole question of why isn't the database that we're using doing what a database should do? But secondarily, you could get it into a database, especially to do this, because this is not that, you know what I mean? This is kind of just a row of numbers for the most part, totally. But anyway, that's a bigger operational question.
Yeah.
My only comment is I can appreciate that you were able to make that adjustment from within yours. I really thought we would come back tonight and it was going to be, the CFO was going to have to adjust, 1,000 from this budget, this department, that department, and we're going to have to reopen and make new recommendations. So logistically, I'm pleased to see it's all from the DPW budget. But just, and I'm sure you went over it in great detail, and these are all, but some of the items that are picked here, they've got some topics or names that are probably very dear to some people's hearts. It's there's something relative to the line, line painting. There's the veterans parks. There's Pappas. There's road repairs, things of that nature. And you explained it well, but just want to ensure that anybody that may be watching or here tonight, that those areas that are near and dear to a lot of people are not going to be adversely impacted relative to this error and these adjustments.
No, so the line painting item, we had planned on using next year's money. So I looked at what we paid last time, and between the 2 years, we can fund that. And then a lot of the bigger items or the bigger sums of money that we're getting are from revolving accounts. So, I mean, the parks or the recreation division is, benefiting from, the parks are supporting the Pappas complex. So it's a justified use for that year, as well as the recreation.
I understand, and I appreciate just giving the assurances that those,
Yes.
those facilities and, yeah.
In the same vein, I think essentially there's really only like a $12,000 reduction in the budget, like to offset, because everything else is either coming out of available funds that we have or coming out of a revolving account. It's not that those items are being reduced, it's that we're funding them from different sources. They're not coming from the tax levy anymore. So if I'm reading it correctly, it's really just the first three items that are actual reductions.
Right.
And each of those, one of them's an employee who isn't here or isn't going to be here, and then the others are essentially like found money from FY25 that hasn't been expended, that's just going to be applied to projects that otherwise, right?
Any other questions relative to the DPW budget? So, Karen, correct me if I'm reading the right number out. So the total for the DPW budget for this year, 7 million, town manager's recommendation, $7,498,424?
Correct.
I'll make a motion to recommend the town manager recommendation of 7,498.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend the DPW budget as recommended by the town manager. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One opposition. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just because the warrant has so many items on it tonight, just wonder if we take into consideration that the discussion relative to remote participation maybe be tabled for
I make a motion that we table that to move it to the next, we wouldn't move it to the next meeting because we may have to do some voting at town meeting. So I would move it to the next scheduled meeting after town meeting.
Second.
Any questions relative to that? Or? Okay, we have a motion and a second to move that item to the next non-town meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the next up we have is the review and vote for recommendations on the May 6, 2025 annual town meeting warrant articles. So historically, our four votes are to either recommend for approval, to not recommend for approval, defer to the petitioner, or to take no position. And that's how it's, the full line that's on our agenda says, take no position at this time and make a recommendation at the town meeting. I think, and we can, this is certainly for discussion, but tonight's warrant articles are a little bit different. In my time on the committee, I don't know that I've ever seen citizen warrant articles. And we've got a whole host of folks that have been here for a long time, and I think this might be a little bit new. We've got the town clerk. I don't know if you can, this,
Yeah, I've tried looking up, it's been quite a few years.
okay.
There's not some.
Okay. So it's a little bit different for us too. So historically, the only things we've waited for, where we've taken no position and waited to town meeting, were items that we were, and we have a few of them on there tonight where we don't have a dollar amount. So for us to take a position, we usually wait and then take a position right before we go into to the town meeting. But some of these, the citizen ones in particular, as you read them, it's not a town department where we sort of defer to them because it's their expertise, or it's, I'll use, we've got our animal control officer tonight. If there's something relative to animal control, that's their specialty, and we defer to that specialty. So we just for discussion purposes, we may have votes tonight that we could potentially just take not a position on. That it's not either a town department that's making a recommendation, but it may in fact be a citizen who's going to be able to better speak to that, the reasons why they wrote up the warrant article, can explain it better, and would be able to explain to town meeting members what the article is. So those might be, and again, I was open for discussion here. If you think that is a case where taking no position is the better position, as opposed to us either not recommending, or which sounds like we're not in favor, but we just may not have that level of expertise or knowledge about the particular area which they're filing the warrant article. But certainly, if anybody has any comments as to our 4 positions that we historically take and what we would be voting as we go through these individual articles.
I just agree. I think there's some of these that I'm not confident. The finance committee, we've never weighed in on issues like them, and as you say, there's a difference between, I think, deferring to members of the town administration who have an expertise and are paid by the town to be the experts in those particular topics, versus citizen positions that I'm sure will get plenty of discussion at town meeting. So.
Anybody else?
I would just add, as someone who's done this in the past, that to your point, exactly, we're a finance board, and normally the 99.9% of our decision-making is based on financial warrant articles. All the others are either taking no position or deferring to petitioner. I have seen some citizen positions like years ago, and the finance committee did just that. Unless there was a financial value assigned to it, which we'll see tonight, we did not recommend or not recommend.
Okay. So on historical, you have the historical, so way back, so do you believe at that time they either did a not recommend, or?
We did recommend or not recommend on financial warrant articles, or those affiliated with a financial value. Those that weren't, we took no position.
Okay.
Or we deferred to the petitioner. It depended on the way the warrant article read. Bob Record at the time was the chair for the years I was there, and he would just read it, and then he didn't make the motion, but the board usually didn't recommend or not recommend. We took the other 2 choices.
Okay.
It was, I don't think I ever experienced a time when we weighed in on something that didn't have any financial consequence or finance subjected to it.
Okay. Any additional discussions on?
Is there a clear distinction between deferring to the petitioner and taking no position?
Anybody happen to?
Yeah,
any Google
I will
searches?
just say, my understanding before this, and based on the Googling that I did right before the meeting, deferring to the petitioner is essentially saying, I believe that the petitioner is in a better position to make a recommendation on this particular article than I am. I personally, and I won't speak for the other members of the committee, but there are articles here that I certainly have opinions on. But if they don't have a financial impact on the town, As a member of town meeting who will be there for that, I plan to make those opinions heard at town meeting in my capacity as a town meeting member. And I don't know that it is the finance committee's position to take a position on certain things. Some of these citizen petitions do have a financial impact. Whether we decide to vote on them or not, I don't know. I think we'll have to discuss it, but some of them don't have like a direct, all of them are going to have an impact on the finances of the town because they're all making changes to the way that the town operates, but some of them don't have a direct like budgetary impact, and those ones are not ones we have traditionally.
And those would be the yes or no, but we have these 3 and 4, which are kind
Yeah,
of.
I think deferring
kind of
is
very
saying,
vague,
deferring is typically saying, the town clerk or the town animal control officer, they've made this recommendation and I defer to that recommendation because they are the expert on this topic. At least in my own experience, I don't know that I want to defer to the citizen petitions in the sense that those are not people that the town has interviewed, hired, and pays to be an expert on a particular topic. Those are people who have in their capacity as citizens decided to weigh in on a particular issue. So I think we would not.
So a sidestep, but that's fine. That's all I'm just trying to clarify.
I would also say on the other side of that, take no position at this time, is I would say that if we voted any of the other 3 choices, that it could appear as though we're taking a position. So that's why we say the word, we don't take a position at this time, because we don't want to give the wrong impression that even though we're not, well, I just stated what I said, yes.
It's not our ambit. Like
Yeah.
we're not appointed to decide how zoning bylaws should be implemented in town. We're appointed to approve the budget and handle the financials. So I think that's the idea.
So obviously, this is a weird year in terms of the articles, but then why would they be a part of our meeting if we're not in charge of them? I'm just kind of wondering, do we just have to, is the bylaws, we have to vote on every warrant article as the finance committee? Okay.
The very first article is to allow town meeting to hear the report of the finance committee.
Yep.
And so typically we tell town meeting.
Sure.
We recommend the approval of these items. We don't recommend the approval of this item. We defer to the petitioner on this one. And in this case, we don't take a position on this because it's not.
That makes sense. I'm just thinking more like the ones that aren't financially impacting, is it to us to even have an opinion to some of the points that have already been made, but.
Like Michael said, my speech at the beginning literally says the finance committee has taken the following position on the, 42 articles on, 2, 4, 3, 4, it was this. We sort of read off what the position was. And I think Patrick put it well, that we don't want to give that appearance or question as to our recommendation or leaning, or for people to have that same discussion. What is the difference between deferred and not,
Yeah.
and doing their own Google searches at town meeting?
Fair enough.
Any additional questions? Otherwise, we'll
Get started.
get into these. And just for those that came out tonight, thank you for coming out. There was a question relative to whether people who had filed, whether it was a department or a citizen petition here, if there was questions relative to it, we wanted to give you the option to be here to be heard on it. So I know there may have been some confusion relative to the language, whether you were asking or requiring people to be here. It really was just meant to be to give folks an option if they wanted to speak upon there. Briefly at that, because we've got 42 to go through, but if they wanted to have their opportunity to address finance before it went to the town meeting. So thank you for those that came out and wanted to discuss those things. Michael, usually my right-hand person to get through these, and we'll try, and I think some of these are very lengthy. We certainly were not going to read through every word of each one. That'll be saved for all of us at town meeting. But we'll get through and make sure they're effectively recorded and get through our positions on these.
I move that we take no position on Article 1.
Second.
Okay, we have what's the language on these? So is it a motion to?
Don't we usually recommend that?
No.
It's just the administrative actions. It's really not even Article 1.
Haven't traditionally.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to take, I'm sorry, what was the?
No position.
No position on Article 1. All in favor?
Eh.
I also, if it's all right with everyone, I will move that we take Articles 2 through 11 as one.
Second.
Motion to take Articles 2 through 11 as one. We had a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay.
And through the chair, the Articles 2 through 11 and a couple others that are mixed in are essentially just the articles that allow the town to operate on a regular basis throughout the course of the year. They all have some level of financial impact, and they're all essentially like allowing the town accountant, the select board, the town manager to do the things that they need to do to keep the town running. So with that, I will motion to recommend approval of Articles 2 through 11.
First, I guess any questions? I mean, we have some newer members. If there's stuff that you haven't seen
Absolutely,
before,
sorry.
any of these, please just pause us on these. But as Michael said, these are typically just the ones that allow us through the general laws and procedural stuff to accept monies and move monies and spend money and things like that. A motion to take those Articles 2 through 11.
And we passed it
Yep,
6,
press that, and motion to
Recommend approval.
recommend approval on those.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Article 12. So I'll actually read this one in because this one's, so this is to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate the sum of $8 million from free cash for the purpose of financing the new fire headquarters at 10 Prospect Street. Such an appropriation shall be subject to a vote by the Board of Selectmen to place a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion question on the May 20, 2025 annual town election ballot. And the approval of said debt exclusion question by a majority of the voters or act on anything relative to this. So this is one that we had, as a committee, had gone over. We had made that recommendations for that $8 million. Any questions on this one?
Motion to recommend approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval on this one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Article 13. This one is to see if the town meeting will vote to authorize a borrowing for the construction of a new Auburn Fire Headquarters at 10 Prospect Street to include payment of costs incidental and/or related thereto. That town anticipates borrowing $23 million. Such borrowing shall be subject to a vote by the Board of Selectmen to place a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion question on the May 20, 2025 annual town election ballot, and the approval of said debt exclusion question by a majority of the voters or act on anything relative thereto. Discussion on this one?
Just say, this is, I think these two are linked. If we build the fire station, obviously we will need to borrow money to pay for it. So for that, I recommend approval. Move to recommend approval.
Second.
We have a motion to recommend approval on this one and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So this is an every year one, but it is the Medicaid receipts that the Auburn School Department receives. This is Article 14, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $160,000 from Medicaid receipts within the general fund revenues to the Auburn School Department operating budget for fiscal year 2026 to fund supplies and medical, therapeutic, and educational services for significantly disabled special needs students, as well as tuition and transportation to and from outside placements or within the district for special needs students, or act on anything relative thereto.
Motion to recommend approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
I move that we take the next three as one.
Second.
Motion and a second to take Articles 15, 16, 17 as one. All in favor? Aye. Okay, discussion on these?
Through the chair, typically in the past, any articles that are financial but don't have a sum set in them yet, we typically will defer, or not defer, excuse me. We will take no position until a meeting prior to town meeting. So unless anyone has any questions, I will move that we take no position at this time and vote on these at our meeting prior to town meeting.
I just want to get confirmation. We do not have, since the printing, we don't have numbers on these yet, but we should have them before town meeting. Is that correct, through the CFO?
Correct. Yes.
No other questions? We had a motion to take no position until the meeting before town meeting, and do we have a second on that? I'm sorry.
Second.
We did have a second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Article
18.
18 is brought by the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee.
If no one has an objection, I will move that we take the next three, 18, 19, and 20 together. They're all amendments to the bylaws put forth by the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee.
Second?
Okay, a motion and a second to discuss Articles 18, 19, and 20 as one. Second.
I- Chair, I think typically we have not taken a position on zoning bylaw changes. We've typically deferred to the petitioner. I think that for discussion on the committee, obviously these have a indirect financial impact in the sense that they are changing the way that housing works in town. The first one is about accessory dwelling units. I think the second one is about multifamily dwelling, and the third one is frontage. So they will all absolutely have an effect on the town's tax base, but since
And
there's-
actually, I think what they're doing is they're updating so that the bylaws coincide with the state. So I think it's more housekeeping than it is any other matter.
I suspect that we will have plenty of discussion on them at town meeting anyway, but if no one has any questions or objections, I will move that we defer to the petitioner.
And just to bring, this is like the perfect example. Another committee has spent a lot of time just reviewing and going over this in detail. It's not really for us. It doesn't have a direct financial impact. So we have a motion to defer to the petitioner on Articles 18, 19, and 20. And a second on that?
Yes.
And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 21, from the building commissioner. Again, is a zoning.
Probably should have included this one too, but I will move that we defer to the petitioner, the building commissioner.
Motion to.
Second.
Move that, to defer that one to the petitioner as well on Article 21, and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Article 22, from the town clerk, the DDIS director and animal control officer. This is relative to some language change and moving a date.
I will start by apologizing that you guys came out tonight, but then I will defer to the, move that we defer to the petitioner.
We have a motion to defer to the petitioner,
Second.
Article 22, and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
23, this one probably will have some discussion. So Article 23, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $18,000 from general fund revenues for regional housing coordinator services or any act on anything relative thereto. This is put up by the DDIS director and the town planner. Good evening. Can you give us some insight on this?
Good evening. Thank you so much. So Article 23, let me start with good news. We were originally asking for 18,000, and through discussions with CMRPC, who is the organization that we work with for this regional housing coordinator position, they have had a vacancy there in this position, unfortunately, for several months. So we lost a person, and they're having some hard time filling that role. However, with discussions with them in the past several weeks, they've come up with a plan, and literally this afternoon, we got a update from them. So they're going to use some of the money that we haven't been able to pay for a person in this position, and we're going to allot the money that we haven't been able to use to put towards the next fiscal year. So this brings it down to just about 6,700. So significant difference.
Is it 67 plus or minus, or would we be better off saying 6,800?
It's actually a little bit less than that. So
6,700 works.
yeah, the exact amount is $6,618. I was just giving like a little bit of room just in case there's something that we don't account for. So if that is amenable to the board, that's some good news that I wanted to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have further.
Do you know if you'll have the final number by town meeting? Like, is this a situation where it may behoove us to wait until it's our meeting prior to town meeting to vote?
I mean, I'm comfortable, I got this information from their director there, so, I'm comfortable giving you $6,618.
Is this funds that we pay as part of this person will work for them and we're paying our share of the coalition, I guess? Is that
So we, as a town, are in a regional collaborative with other towns. I think we're 5 or 6 towns. And CMRPC, God bless you, CMRPC is the coordinator that hires this person and then handles how they interact with all the towns. We have this as a regional position, so we pay for, along with the other towns, there's like a sliding scale of how much you can pay for the services that you get. So I believe this is for about 4 hours per week, 16 hours per month. It's not a ton of time, but the advantage to having this person is that they work in several towns, so they get to see how other towns are doing things, and the good and the bad is shared with everybody so that we can benefit for regional housing discussions. So there's a lot of discussion, obviously, around housing, how we can get more affordable housing, how we can update our housing inventory with the state, getting the kind of the hotline to the state as to what's coming down the line. So it's a position where we probably couldn't afford to pay somebody just full-time just to do that, but it provides some help and assistance in Department of Development and Inspectional Services, and specifically planning, to be able to kind of keep up on what's happening regionally, and then getting the benefits to help further our goal of getting affordable housing and trying to balance the challenges around that. You're welcome. Sure.
Can you also just explain, in the budget, there's a CMRPC assessment in the planning budget.
Yes.
What is, I'm sure that we've already answered this question, and I apologize for not remembering, but what's the difference between the budgeted, like operational budgeted amount, and then this that has to be a separate article?
Sure. So the CMRPC assessment, that is an assessment based on our population. So CMRPC is a regional planning agency. They offer like all different services to the towns, and we get the benefit of them looking at a number of different, any different topics that we may deal with. For example, we've received like technical assistance grants from them. We pay a portion of money. I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm thinking it's like $4,500. The
assessment's
assessment.
5,400, yeah.
Oh, 54, okay, sorry, had the numbers switched around. So we pay that yearly. It's kind of like our annual dues. And for that, we can pick up the hotline and we can ask them about a number of different topics that we may need help with. So, like, for example, housing is a hot topic, traffic. A couple of years ago, I think they were collecting some information regarding solid waste and recycling. And so then they had like a legislative meeting regarding how we can improve certain things that each town does. So it's kind of like almost like a regional support system. And honestly, we talk to them like weekly. So.
This is a specific to housing and like actual
Yes, this is a,
support. So
exactly. This is almost like an à la carte item. I mean, that's probably not the best way to describe it, but in my head, it's kind of like an extra thing that we can be part of. And then, for specifically for this housing item that we had asked for, that's just like one of their services. If we wanted to pay more money, we could get that person for more hours, but it seems like we did get a lot of benefit from this person in the past year.
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
Motion and second to recommend Article 23. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Actually, are you going to change the amount? So we actually should move that we're recommending approval on the 6,700, just for clarity.
Okay, so that amount's changed from the original,
Right, the 18,000, because she's going to not put the 18,000. You're going to replace that, aren't you? In the warrant?
so, I'm sorry, the actual number?
6618.
$6,618 is, I believe, what it is.
Even six?
6618.
6618.
Okay, so just, why don't we amend that with the number that the article has?
I move that we recommend approval of an amended article that will appear in the future at 6618.
Okay, for Article 23, the amount to appropriate 6618 from general fund revenues for regional housing coordinator services, or,
And second.
in a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again.
Article 24, this is from the Town Assessor's Office. To see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $25,000 from overlay surplus for assessor revaluation, training, support, and services. Do we have anybody from the Assessor's Office that wanted to? Good evening.
Good evening. So the 25,000 ask is to meet our annual, like, 5-year revaluation obligations, prepare for reval and meet the obligations of the annual interim update. Sorry. Broke it. Oh, we go Plan B. Let's go Plan B.
My only question is, why is this treated as, like, not a why as in I just don't know. Why is it treated as a separate warrant article as opposed to like a part of the operational budget?
That's kind of a question. I don't know if you have any insight on that, Karen. We've had that conversation.
Sure, so this article actually works in combination with the amount, there's a 15,000 for reval in the assessor's budget. So the costs have been increasing over the last several years. And also doing it as a warrant article allows us to carry over any funds that may have not been used on an annual basis.
Okay.
And then in that fifth year, when we have the full valuation, there won't be as high of a bump if we have any additional funds available.
Patrick?
I just want to clarify because I understood this a little differently. So we have an overlay account, and for those that might not know what an overlay account is, it's money that the assessors use over a 3 or 4 year period because I believe, is it 4 years or 5?
5.
It's 5 years. It's because of various receivables and so forth, and people making their tax payments. But I believe at the end of year 5, anything left in that overlay account actually goes into the general fund. Is it automatically in Auburn? Does it go from overlay into the general fund after the 5th year? Because the way I interpreted this was that are you telling me there was a deficit in the overlay account at this point? Or the overlay account isn't at 0? So at some point, it either has excess overlay or it has a deficit of overlay. So I interpreted this as excess and overlay. And then where my question was going was this to take the opportunity to have the money in the budget as the overlay before we took the 5-year excess balance and moved it into the general fund?
The overlay balance doesn't close after 3 years, it continues going forward. But a different way from going and appropriating the money is by going back to and looking at the balance in the overlay surplus, comparing it to what we have for the taxes receivable in real estate and personal property. And if there's an excess, to be able to take it from there rather than going back to the taxpayers.
So the warrant article is actually asking us to take the opportunity to benefit from some excess at this point.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Overlay surplus, yeah.
Additional questions on this side?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
Motion and a second to recommend approval of Article 24. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Article 25 isn't written yet, so I'm going to go ahead and move that we take no position at this time.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to take relative to Article 25 to take no position at this time and discuss it at prior to.
Yeah, and discuss prior to town meeting.
Okay. All in favor? We have a motion to second that. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Article 26. To see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $250,000 from sewer retained earnings to conduct an assessment management plan or act on anything relative thereto. It's by the DPW director and the sewer superintendent. We won't tell Chris that we broke the mic.
Oh, no. Hello again. So this is the 250 for the asset management plan, right? Sorry, I didn't have the list in front of me. So this is a project that we submitted to the state revolving fund for an asset management plan for the sewer system. The goal of this project is to get basically an inventory and assessment of every piece of infrastructure within the sewer system, every pipe, every manhole, every pump station, every piece of equipment. The system is aging, and it would be a good idea to sort of have a long-term outlook about what the capital improvement is going to look like. And the main goal of that is so we can avoid any sort of rate spikes in the future, and we can make sure we're kind of approaching our rate setting with sort of a long-term view. So this project was submitted to the state revolving fund. They have an asset management grant program. It funds 60% of the project, and it includes a calculation for in-kind services. So we did get approved on the draft intended use plan that was released by SRF in January. So we know that the grant is approved. It is a $150,000 grant, and we assumed, I believe it was $40,000 worth of in-kind services. So the cost to the department is only going to be $60,000, and the rest of it will be towards consulting services. So we have to appropriate the full amount of the project. It's a reimbursement grant. So that's why we are asking for the full 250.
Additional questions relative to Article 26?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
A motion and a second to recommend approval of Article 26. All in favor?
Aye.
And Article 27, see if town meeting will vote to appropriate $150,000 from sewer retained earnings for sewer easement access improvements.
Yes, so this sort of came about on another project that we were working on. It was a sewer lining project off of Goddard Drive. We have a large 24-inch concrete sewer that goes off-road through the woods, about 3,000 or 4,000 feet through the woods to the point of the limits of the project. That project is about a $1.4 million lining project, included easement access improvements, so we were able to get equipment in there, and it's also important just in general for us to be able to access it with our equipment. That project did not get approved by SRF in their loan program, so we've sort of gone back to the drawing board a little bit, and we want to break out the easement access portion of that project. We believe we can do some of that work in-house, or at the very least, we may be able to bid that separately and get more advantageous pricing from sort of a local contractor to do that sort of earthwork versus, and then when we do the rest of the project, we can have a lining-specific contractor bid the lining portion of the project. So we're still looking at our internal resources. We have guys committed to a lot of different projects, and we don't want to spread them too thin. So we're still trying to decide how much of that work we can do in-house versus bidding out. But we expect it could vary between, the estimate from the engineer was $200,000 to $300,000 for this work. It's about $50,000 worth of materials, so if we do it in-house, it could be significantly less than that. If we bid it out, it's a little unclear how much it's going to cost. We could do a little bit of each. $150,000 I thought was a good number because we have a lot of money carried forward in our sewer line repair CIP items from past years, so that if it's a little bit more than that, we can cover the extra cost. So the goal is to do that part of the project this year, and likely get a borrowing authorization this fall so that we can bid out the rest of the project next year.
Any questions relative to Article 27?
I guess just to make sure I understand this properly, as I recall, you had like 900,000 in retained earnings.
Correct.
And this is the only way, you have to do a warrant article to transfer it. Like, there is no other way to get the money to spend it.
That's correct. Either that or putting it into our capital improvement budget.
And the thing you just mentioned about borrowing for that next project, how big a project is that? I forgot. For
Yeah, so the full project was about $1.4 million. So I want to say that project without the easement access would be, it's around $1 million, $1.1 million, and that does include engineering costs for bidding and construction phase services. So it's engineering and construction. So around $1 million is what I'd expect it to be. We'll see where costs are next year. I'm not clear if the materials that we're using for this type of lining are, they're domestic or if they're imported. That's something that we're going to learn a lot more about. But yeah, that's the current estimate.
Any additional questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
Motion and second to recommend approval of Article 27. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Article 28 is by the DPW Director. This is relative to the town meeting. We'll vote to accept changes to the drainage easement along the private portion of Commonwealth Ave and on 5 Commonwealth Ave, as shown on a plan prepared by Land Planning Incorporated entitled Easement Plan, located at number 5 Com Ave, and dated March 20, 2025, and filed with the town clerk, contingent upon the owner developer recording said plan and legal description at the Worcester County Register of Deeds.
Motion to defer to the petitioner?
Probably should have asked that before I read that whole thing off.
Second.
I was on a roll.
You were. You did a good job. I would have stumbled.
So we have a motion to defer to the petitioner
Second.
on Article 28 and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 29. I don't know if, this is from the Supervisor of Cable and Community Television, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $210,000 from cable retained earnings to cover unforeseen cost overruns due to rising construction materials costs, asbestos remediation, and oil tank removal at Camp Gleason, or act on anything relative thereto. DPW Director, I think this sounds more like it's in the facilities than it is on the,
Yes, so the funding is coming out of the cable retained earnings, but obviously the DPW facilities is during the project. So as you all may know, we've been working on revamping Camp Gleason. There's been some major improvements done, and we've already, this would be the third time that we'd be going to town meeting for funding for this project. It started in 2019. There was $200,000 appropriated at that time at town meeting. Subsequent to that, the 2022 town meeting, we had asked for 87,000, a little bit under 87,000, in addition to ARPA funding, which was at 115,500. So the total appropriation to date has been 402,490.08 cents. To date, we have at this point, the balance of that money is a little over 22,000, with about $62,000 encumbered. And there's some outstanding issues that we need to cover. So we're asking for $210,000 from cable retained earnings, and that would cover unanticipated HVAC costs, The estimate in 2019 was 40,000, and the bid price came in at 120. That might go down because there's still some rebates that are available. However, we need to pay the vendor before we can apply for the rebates. So we have $5,000 that we estimated for sewer replacement of a grinder pump. 20,000 is allocated for electrical, finishing the electrical. We have electrical, rough electrical, but the finished electrical, trim countertops and furnishings. $17,000 for video equipment, $10,000 to get rid of what we're calling the water service bunker. I plan on having an open house right before the pre-town meeting to allow people to take a look at what what the building looks like. But the water service bunker is basically, it's a bump out, but it doesn't have a roof. I think it might be a metal plate on top of it with some fill over it. Doesn't really have any purpose, and preferably not wanting to collect groundwater in it, and don't really want it might not be structurally stable. So we're looking to fill that. We're also allocating $13,000 for an ADA ramp, $30,000 for contingency, and the big item that is a big question mark is the oil tank remediation. So we have money encumbered to remove the existing oil tank, but we don't know if there's any soil contamination there. I am aware of an old oil tank that was possibly removed, and well, it was replaced. Not really sure if it was removed at the time. So we're concerned that there might be some soil contamination. So that's why I'm bumping that number up. The consultant is coming in 2 weeks, not next week, but the week after, to start digging the oil tank. So we'll have a little bit more answers on that, but that's the biggest question mark on the project.
Just, somebody online had said that this building had cost 600,000, and I was like, no, there's no way. But based on the numbers you just gave us, I guess that is actually correct.
So what the 600,000 would be the total of what we're asking plus the money that was already allocated. I'm hoping that it's not the 600,000, but with not knowing what we're doing with that oil tank and what we're going to find, we're trying to be very conservative.
When this project was started, what was there a guesstimate? I mean, that was back in, I guess, 6 years ago. Was there like any kind of a guesstimate as to what the project was going to be? I'm just, I was surprised. I assume other people are surprised, but.
Right, so there's been several things that went wrong, and I wasn't really involved with the project when it was started, but I would assume that it was, I'm assuming because it was funded at $200,000 in 2019, that would have been what was expected at the time. But we did have some issues that we didn't anticipate. There's been several times that we've had to get asbestos removal, mold remediation. There were some structural issues that made us remove a portion of the building and rebuild it. So there were some unexpected things that we needed to cover. As with any old building, once you start.
Most of the work done in-house, or was it?
Most of the work was done in-house. The electrical, the plumbing, the HVAC, obviously we needed to sub out, but we've, I know that I said that last meeting, we tried to look to see if we can get the project moving along a little bit faster by having, contractors do it, but with the prices, prevailing wages, and trying to get people to actually bid on the projects, it didn't make sense.
I know you said you weren't initially a part of the planning. Do you know why it's taken 6 years for a project like just a rehab? I mean, obviously, there's been some challenges, but I'm assuming COVID initially, but other than that?
So the project at the beginning, it was basically intended for the facility section to just plug away at it. The way that I understand it, there wasn't really, any sense of urgency. So if the facility section was pulled away for another project, then it wasn't really a big deal. In addition to, I think it was last year, there was a little bit of a pause, just because the facility section is made up of 2 people. And the facilities manager, he moved down south, so we needed to find somebody else and get them on board.
And then I guess just as a follow-up to that, so I mean, planning for oil tanks, I mean, that seems kind of standard to look at when you're rehabbing a facility. Is that not something that was looked at? And again, I understand maybe you weren't involved in that, so, but,
I'm not sure if
Not
that
sure.
was
Okay.
if that discussion ever happened.
okay. All right, and so hopefully, we're hoping that there is no contamination and that money doesn't need to be used to remediate, just remove.
Right.
Okay.
Hopeful, but
But obviously, yeah, no idea. And we don't know how old the tank is?
we don't have any records of it.
Okay.
I think one of our employees is still employed with the town, and he's worked here 30 years, so could be around there.
My only comments is I certainly have fond memories of Camp Gleason as a kid. I was glad to see it was going to be rehabbed initially, but I think, again, hindsight's 2020. Had we looked then and saw it was going to be a $600,000 rehab, none of us would have been agreeable. We probably would have looked to do something with the site other than probably that existing structure. But we're there, right? We're 2/3 of the way there relative to expenditures moving forward. And just my question is, the reason it's coming out of cable retained earnings is because primary use for this space is going to be considered for meeting space, public meetings, et cetera, that it's going to be wired so that a committee such as this could hold their meetings there. Is that correct? Is that why we can utilize that account?
Right, so the cable superintendent is going to have an office there, so he'll be able to store his equipment there and everything, but it will have all the bells and whistles for being able to record meetings and.
Thank you.
Is he moving out of the high school and putting everything at Camp Gleason?
That is my understanding.
Any additional questions on it?
No, but I think on the coattails of everything that's been discussed and what we talked about last week, it just really makes a difference that we have a more, the more things you put in town, whether it's avoiding Camp Gleason or that, we've added the Pappas Park. I mean, at some point, we have to make decisions, invest in what we have and keep up with it because the town at some point lost interest in Gleason and then now they're coming back later and they really want it. And you can see over the years, the value of money and how much more expensive it is now to bring back because we sort of left it alone to begin with when maybe we shouldn't have done that. So I would just, my 2 cents is just from a finance committee is when you're going to cast something aside later, just realize that it's going to cost a lot of money to bring it back if you don't continue to invest in it. So thank you. But you did use the word rebate too, and I'm wondering if, even though we're hooked on the 600 plus, we may see some of that back. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So I just want to take a recognition that even though we're putting money forward to this, the process is that we can receive some kind of economical rebate back for it. And so therefore, we may be able to recoup some of the money. So at the end of the day, we're expending 600 now, but we may see a return on some of that value.
Okay, any additional questions on Article 29?
Well, motion to recommend because we have to. We've already invested so much more into it.
Second.
Motion
Or
for
to- approval, yeah.
Approval?
Second.
And a
I
second.
didn't
All in
mean to
favor?
break your stride.
Oh, you're good.
Thank you.
That's your name on that one.
There you go.
The next three are presented by the Select Board. I know we're very kind to have some members of the Select Board that took time out of their evening. I don't know that we'll need them, but thank you for both for being here this evening with us. Yeah.
So I don't know whether we should vote through the chair, just for discussion. I don't know whether these are things that we would typically vote on. I have been assured that they are revenue neutral, but essentially they do all, involve changes to how property tax is assessed and paid in town. So I don't know if either of you have anything that you'd like to say about it, or you don't have to, but yeah, you came out and you hung out for a while, so.
Yeah, we could be here on a Monday.
We know.
He's in his first term, he's new. So these are all involving tax exemptions, so this is why it's revenue neutral. We're not increasing the tax levy, we're simply reapportioning the tax levy among the residential class or the commercial class. So there's a zero impact on the budget. The levy is exactly what it is today. We're just trying to allow more of our seniors and veterans, because the state isn't very good about keeping up with asset limits, to try and expand that, as well as give a slightly richer benefit, which obviously those of us in those classes will bear the burden of. But it should not be a huge expense. We're talking pennies on the dollar. So, but to the individuals who are going to get the benefit of this, they may be able to stay in their home. They may be able to make repairs to their homes. It's going to be very consequential to them.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that with respect to the veterans warrant article, so that will go into effect upon approval by town meeting. That is state law that is already passed, although it's a local option, so we have to vote to take advantage of that. The other two, the senior as well as the small business, this is home rule legislation that essentially the town of Auburn is filing with the legislature. We've already talked to Senator Moore's office, and in the past, Representative Frost has been supportive as well. And what this will allow is for Auburn to do a special exemption from the state law to offer a wider amount of tax abatement for senior residents that qualify. It also increases the asset limit that they're allowed to have, as well as their income. And the reason for that is the state is, as Ms. Carpenter said, notorious for passing a legislation and then shelving it. So those amounts have not kept up that were passed 10, 15 years ago, have not been keeping up. The legislature is not revisiting every year. So this will not only increase that amount, it will also, it will bring the dollars to current years and hopefully cast a wider net on who's eligible for these benefits. And just so you know that it's not something that the selectmen just kind of grabbed out of space and decided to do. This is rooted in all of our planning documents, so that the master plan, the 2024 housing production plan that has gone through numerous town boards, approved by those boards, plus the Board of Selectmen, have called for implementing these types of strategies in order to, one, with respect to the seniors, to allow our seniors to age in place, to remain in the home and the community that they built for the rest of their lives, as well as with the small businesses, to allow small businesses to come into town, to entice them to come into town, to invest in the town, to stay in the town, to grow our economic fabric of locally owned businesses, small businesses that bring employment as well as commerce to the town. So these are us looking to now start implementing those types of strategies that have been in these planning documents that to date have unfortunately been collecting dust on the shelf, but we think it's time that we start taking these serious on the select board and start moving these ideas forward.
Are we discussing all of them, all three of them together? Is that, are we?
Well, we can-
Let me answer my question, maybe that'll make more sense. Because this is revenue neutral, so that sort of means we have a zero-sum game. And if, we're going to give, a resident a tax abatement or a break or whatever, which means it's going to fall onto the other residents. They're going to pick up the slack. And I'm curious about how that, and at the same time, we're also talking about giving small businesses a tax break, certain small businesses. And so my first question is does that mean that the businesses are also picking up that tax break? And I'm just curious for the CFO, like logistically, is this like a crazy amount of work to do this? How much money is really being shifted generically, if we don't?
So I'll answer one part and defer to our assessor for the other. With respect to why it's revenue neutral, exactly. So with respect to the small businesses, we already have a small business tax credit, and it's made up by the other businesses. This will expand it to make it more eligible to more smaller businesses that are a little bit larger than allowed in state law. Again, they set this limit, years ago and have not increased it, despite Representative Frost putting something forward that would be statewide. They rejected that, but there's more likelihood that they'll do it on a local municipality level than statewide. With respect to the cost to implement this, I'll defer to our staff.
Excuse me, so the small business exemption, which the select board is talking about increasing, it just shifts the burden from a particular class of the businesses that qualify for it to the other commercial properties and the other industrial properties that do not qualify for it. So it just shifts the burden within that class code, within the commercial industrial. So the other taxpayers, the residents, they don't feel I don't want to say pain, but they don't feel the taxation of that.
And is this, are we talking, I just have no idea. Is it 50,000 or 100,000?
So
12,000 bucks?
I did some rough projections, and right now we have like 61 accounts that fit the under $1 million valuation. If this were to go through, the assessing division have projected that maybe another 30 to 40 businesses may qualify, bringing it to like a total of 90 or 100. And the shift would probably be another $100,000 in actual tax money to the other commercial and industrial parcels.
How many total commercial industrial parcels do we have?
We have 450 commercial and about 110 industrial, so 550.
Essentially shifting from 100,000 from 30 taxpayers to another 400 and something taxpayers.
Yeah, from 100 to the other 450.
$250 a year or something like that.
I didn't get in that's going to vary.
I'm doing some back of my hand.
Well,
math.
it's going to vary because if you have a mall that's valued at 26 million, yeah, I don't have the average. But if you have the,
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't asking you for I was saying the 250 is take 100,000 divided by 400. I think that's right.
I guess my other question is, because we have a split tax rate, if we were to simply increase the rate on the business side, like what is, each point, like could we just make up the same difference more efficiently by simply shifting the tax rate and taking a little bit of the burden off residents regardless of their particular status, and putting it onto the business, which sounds like that's what we're going to be doing anyway, because we're taking it off the small businesses and putting it on the bigger businesses. Couldn't we just do the same thing effectively with just changing changing the split.
Those options,
So-
yeah, those options are presented to the select board every year, and they vote on the factor, so I don't,
Yeah, so each November we vote on the factor. I would say that, with respect to moving the factor, that would actually, if we shifted more of the factor to the businesses, that would actually hurt the small businesses that we're trying to help, because that actually increases their tax bill. And if we don't provide this incentive, then, this abatement, then we're actually going in the opposite direction. We're actually making it more expensive for small businesses to locate and operate here. So this is why we're targeting small businesses. Again, as the assessor said, and as, some of you pointed out, we are basically shifting from a smaller group to a large group, and that shift is divided amongst a bigger, the pie. So, I mean, it's relatively small compared to the benefit that we believe we're going to get. With respect to the residents, certainly all of the residents will benefit if we shift the factor, towards the businesses. However, that, again, absent making these changes, that does nothing for seniors to get, the amount that they would save in terms of that, their small little sliver of the pie, is not actually equivalent to what they would actually realize with this passed.
Do we have a average projection of what this is for us in savings for a small business and for the seniors and veterans after tax bill?
So I would defer to the assessor's staff for that, only because as select board, we're not privy to personal information of our taxpayers.
in terms of the small business, I just basically did some projections as to the total amount of properties that would potentially qualify and what that actual tax dollar was amount. But again, with the small business exemption, it doesn't affect the residential. They're going to pay the same amount, so I don't know if I answered the question or if there's something else.
Well, the people who get the exemption.
Yeah, I think,
Have an average.
I mean, I can give you, so I did get those informations from the assessor's office with respect to how many people are currently taking advantage of or qualified. So for what's called the 41C senior exemption, as well as the senior surviving spouse, only 65 households townwide currently qualify. So that is, when we all know how many seniors are on our streets or on our residents, that's a small amount of the senior population, senior households that do not qualify under the current rules, that hopefully will be, a larger percentage will qualify. With the veterans, it's a little bit different. There's there's 4 different veteran categories. And so the veterans that get 10 to 90%, there's 76 households that qualify. The veteran surviving spouse, so the veteran's passed, but their spouse carries on the benefit. There's 12 households that qualify. The veterans that receive 100% exemption, there's 44 that qualify. And then the veterans that are 100%, what's called 100% blind, there's 1 that qualifies. So again, a small, although more than seniors, it's still a smaller amount than probably would qualify with those changes under the veterans.
I know Patrick had a question. I just want to make sure I get his.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, because you made a couple of statements, and that we've talked about a lot of concepts in like a very short period of time. But when you refer to the small business exemption, you mentioned that you want to use it as an ability to attract businesses. So first and foremost, when you're working with the tax factor, don't kid yourself that commercial is watching what's happening with residents, and residents are watching what's happening with commercial. So even though you might make the statement that, well, couldn't we just have the commercial make up for it? They're watching that, and the last thing we want to do is discourage them from wanting to stay in Auburn, because we're taking advantage of that opportunity. But I wanted to mention that we've talked about implementing an economic development person, and that person is hopefully wanting to attract new business. The TIF, or the tax credits that you would receive if you came on board as a new business venture in the town, are completely different than these these small business exemptions. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that they were completely two separate. So what these warrant articles are doing are they're sort of defining the groups of people that could fall into so the way I see this is these warrant articles are creating buckets. And we have a group of businesses that could meet an opportunity to benefit from it. And we have a group of citizens in various buckets that can meet for it. And in the middle, the amount of people are so small that it's sort of a de minimis amount that's being shifted. So there really isn't a lot of weight going in any one direction. And that actually sounds viable to me, coming from a finance perspective, because what you want to do is keep things in balance so that everybody understands the nature of the warrant article and that everybody's receiving fair play. Is that a good way to say that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, CFO had.
What I would like to point out is that these are actually 3 different types of articles, whereas 30 is for the exemptions for the seniors. And I don't want to say, and I'll have Seth jump in at any time too. I want to say that this one is revenue neutral because we're not really sure how many seniors are going to qualify because we're changing the, the asset amounts and the income
And
amounts.
exactly, it's not for, when we say seniors, we don't mean seniors. I want to clarify that we mean a category of seniors. So you have seniors and you have this group and this group and this group and this group. And we're talking about one select group with limited income.
Right, so I just want to point out that we can't really quantify what this is, but this one will not be revenue neutral. There will be additional amounts, abatements that will be granted to the seniors in this category. Whereas in Article 31, we were talking about that one being relatively revenue neutral between the smaller businesses and then the larger businesses. And then Article 32, being the CPI is going to be applied now to the veterans abatements. So there will be some additional amounts that are going to be, that again isn't revenue neutral. So I just kind of wanted to point that out, that they're 3 separate, even though we might be talking about it in one conversation, they're 3 separate articles.
So when you say it's not revenue neutral, you're saying it's lowering the town's revenue.
Well, not really lowering the revenue, but we're going to have to probably increase, what would you say, increase the overlay to cover.
Yeah, I think there would be less reimbursement from the state.
I'm not opposed to this. I'm just trying to, in the purpose of clarity, how much help are we actually giving people? And that's why I was asking what the average is, whether it's $50 or $500 or $5,000. I'm just curious what the number is. I'm not driving anything beyond just asking the question to get a scale of what we're discussing for people.
I think on the Article 30, the 41C, there's no way to project that. Because there's just no way to project.
Yeah, there's no way, I don't think there's a way to project it until it gets passed and then the residents come forward and apply for it.
And then we have a head count and tally and take it from there, but there's no way to, because they'd have to prove with their income tax returns and things like that. We don't know what people make for money and.
Now, under the existing system, are they getting $50 of help or $500 worth of help?
They're getting, like, if they're under the 41C, they're getting 500 up, escalating up to 1,400. So they start in the program next year. Let's say their taxes go up $100, they would get 600 the next year. If the taxes went up the next year, another 100, they get 700, and it's capped out at 1,400.
And to be clear, this warrant article, this warrant article both increases the exemption and increases the amount of people who could potentially be eligible for that exemption.
Correct. Auburn has already taken steps to maximize the amount under the current law that we can currently give. So what this does is this increases the amount that they're eligible for, and then increases the amount of people who will be eligible based on their income or their assets.
I was just going to ask, do we know that, are there other towns that are exploring this avenue as well?
Yeah, so I'm a big one for, if somebody's already put it out there, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. So there are several other communities that have gone through this process and are going through it again with the current legislative cycle, including larger municipalities. Boston just filed legislation, some other smaller cities, and other towns as well.
Thank you.
Additional questions on the articles 30, 31, and 32?
I move that we take these three as one.
I'll second that.
Motion to take articles 30, 31, and 32 as one. And a second, all in favor?
I move that we defer to the petitioner on those three articles.
We have a motion to defer to the petitioner on these. Any further discussion?
Second.
If someone objects, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah,
to
no,
discuss
that's
it.
why I'm seconding it, because
I
we
mean,
can
it's-
discuss it.
It's a good idea to help the people that need the help. So, I mean, I don't really have any problem with recommending it, but I'll leave it. I mean, I think that is the purpose of a society, is to help the weak.
I'd agree with that.
Well, I wouldn't say that they're weak, they're just at a point in their life where their finances are different than other individuals.
Right.
I was just going to second Steve. I would say I could recommend this if we so chose, but I'm okay with deferral too.
I think, given the representation that it is not having an impact on the budget, it might have an impact on individual taxpayers, but not the budget overall. I lean towards deferring to the petitioner because it's our function in this process is to approve or
Financially.
disapprove of the budget itself. But again, it's why.
Question is,
Yeah.
I think people look to the board, for better or worse, because we have a better pulse of the things that are going on.
Yeah.
And so,
And in this case, I
I
think
don't
the
think-
people with the best pulse are the people who set our tax rates, which is why I would defer to the select board personally. But again, I'm happy, like, if we feel comfortable.
Well, just point of order, we have our motion on the floor, and then we can vote, and then depending on how that goes, then we can change the motion. But we can't have two motions on the floor at the same time.
Exactly. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
You're going to abstain?
Well, I would vote for approval.
Wait, we can't have a second motion until we finish this motion, so.
So we have four, Andy didn't raise or not.
He threw me off.
Sorry, I guess I should just
That's all
vote no, right? Proper thing to-
No, I'll vote for deferral.
Same here. I'll vote to defer to the board of selectmen who has a better handle on it than any of us could possibly have. So, okay, so
Let's defer.
All three of them are deferred. We took all three as one.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.
Okay, the next one is 33. It is a citizen's petition. Mr. Barocas, here, we have a few people that did appear online. I don't believe he is one of them. This one, number 33. Okay, I'll read this off. To see if town meeting will vote to allow permanent residents of 10 years or longer in the town of Auburn reaching their 68th birthday will have any residential property tax increases deferred until the property is sold. Senior citizen must file annually a form to be provided by the tax assessor on or before April 15th. A copy of the deed must be on file along with proof of identity by providing driver's license or birth certificate. So I don't believe Mr. Barocas is here to explain or give any insight on this warrant article. Any questions?
I was just going to ask, logistically, this strikes me as very difficult to implement, because you're basically giving people a loan for, if their taxes go up $1,500, you're basically giving them a loan for $1,500 for some vague date in the future, probably when they pass away. It just strikes me as very complicated. I was wondering what your view was.
I think it would be difficult to administer. I know that the former assessor back in 2014, 15, 16 maybe had one or two of these, But actually, it actually wasn't this, it was a different exemption, it was a 41A deferral. And she handled it with the head accountant and collector, and I wasn't privy to that, but I think I'm not sure of the administration of how it actually happened, but
I have a sort of a, I guess, related question. Is this something that would require home rule legislation as well? Like, can the town just do this even?
so my interpretation of this article is that it doesn't fit in any of the existing exemptions that the state offers, and it would have to be a home rule. That's the way I'm not an attorney, but that's the way I read it. It doesn't fit in any box that the Commonwealth offers right now.
I think we probably have to have more detail too, because what if you don't sell it, it's just.
Well, there's a whole host of issues that it opens.
Inheritance,
Yeah.
It needs to be way more thorough than this, I would say.
I'll make a motion not to recommend.
We have a motion not to recommend this one for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second not to recommend for approval Article 33. All in favor?
Okay.
Okay, this is number 34, is the first of several. Mr. Tatro, I see he may be in the back row waiting patiently. Thank you, sir. It's number 34.
Soliciting bylaw.
Do we have to?
So, given that this does not appear to have a direct financial impact, and is an update to a bylaw, I move that we take no position.
Motion to take no position on this one?
Second.
On Article 34 in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
35. This one, again, from Mr. Tatro, this is to approve a new traffic study bylaw for large-scale project impacts.
I suspect this would have like indirect economic impact on the town, but again, I don't see it like a direct expenditure or effect of the budget, so I move that we take no position on Article 35.
Any other comments, questions on this one before we go through the motions?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to take no position on Article number 35. All in favor?
36 is video recording of all decision-making bodies.
So Article 36, again, Mr. Tatros, this is, see if the town meeting will vote to approve that all decision-making boards and commissions shall be televised and recorded for replay and archival purposes, to include Arbor Water Commissioners and other boards as needed. I don't believe this one has any financial, but.
Well, I think it does have a financial impact, and I'll tell you why. Because the payroll for these individuals that come to our meetings, and I would think that when we're going through the budget, that for the $300, $400, $600, $1,000, $2,000, $4,000 that we see on the line item for their time that they're spending going from room to meeting, that there are boards that are not televised, and I think we would see a direct impact in the budget. We don't have a number to work with today, so I'm going to say defer to the petitioner, but I would just make the observation that if it passes, it does have a financial impact, because it would mean that there would have to be available to work more hours. That's my only observation.
Mr. Tatro, did you want, you're welcome on, absolutely, sir.
Patrick, okay, you're talking about the town employees having to go?
Like Rick, who
Yeah.
comes to our meeting and
Yeah.
the selectmen meeting
Yeah.
and stuff like
Okay.
that, and then the other gentlemen that float with them, yes.
Fair enough, thank you.
So this would not add any meetings to anybody's schedule. This is going to be required that they televise the current meeting. So they might have one at Thursday, third Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. It's not televised. They do their own local minutes. It's recorded on site down at the water department. This is to ensure that those meetings are going to be recorded and they're going to be put on to a local access channel or a YouTube channel of their own creation, whatever it might be. So this is not going to affect anybody else's schedule. It's not going to add any hours to anybody's operation.
So to just jump in, and I'm sorry, I think the point we're trying to make is that the town pays someone to be here to run the equipment, to record the meeting. Some of these meetings are not currently televised or recorded. Therefore, we will have to pay someone to be at the meeting in order to do it. Like the town can't
Not
mandate.
necessarily, and let me explain why. So what I'm advocating here is that they are a quasi-government organization, okay? So let's be clear about that first. So quasi-government organization, we do elect them and we do pay their bills, so they are withholding, or I should say, obligated to the taxpayers. So as far as the town's role in this, being required to televise these things, that's up in the air, and it's going to be decided on how the water department wants to respond to it. So the water department could invest their own, they could put a couple of cameras up in their little meeting room down there, and they could project it on their own YouTube channel if they want to. It's not necessarily a town burden to do that. If they wanted to move from the water department up here and schedule it with Act TV, that would be their choice to decide how they want to handle it.
I guess I'm just trying to, so this isn't specific only to the Water Commission, it's all decision-making boards across the town.
Correct. So
I'm not aware at this point whether every single decision-making board is currently televised, but if there are any decision-making boards that are currently not televised, that will have a direct impact on the budget because we will have to pay people to be at those meetings to record them.
Correct.
There are
That's
also
water and
meetings
sewer.
that happen currently in rooms that are not wired for sound and for video. So if they're not wired for sound and for video, either we will have to move those meetings to a place that is wired for sound and video, which will affect scheduling and will require additional people, or we will have to pay for equipment to be in place. So there's 100% an impact on the town's budget. There's in my mind, there's no chance that there's not.
Okay, and I appreciate that,
yeah.
but that's not correct.
I appreciate your opinion. Thank you.
So, and
I'm gonna go ahead and
I'm
move
sorry,
that we
can I
not
respond?
recommend this item. Is there a second?
Can we finish discussing? I don't know. So for the most part, I think Act TV goes to all of the most of the meetings anyway. But when I was on Housing Board, Housing had taken a vote to not record their meetings.
Correct.
ACT came in because they have a right to, every citizen has a right to, go to a meeting and record it. But there was one meeting that we had where ACT TV was not there. And so the real question I have with this, first of all, I agree with you, everything should be recorded, everything should be transparent. This is a no-brainer. But the problem I have with this question is, number one, is there any teeth to this, first of all, or is it just a statement? And you still have the mechanic, the physical problem, which was ATV didn't come to our meeting because they were in 2 other places already, or 3 other places. They did not come to our meeting intentionally. Now, Housing, as far as I know, everything is recorded. I know there are certain other departments, like you mentioned, water, which I'm not sure any of those are recorded or televised, but I could be wrong. And so this is just sort of a wide open, like if they don't record it, what happens?
We'll let the Attorney General's office decide that. If the
Well, that's
town
the
meeting
thing,
votes
like,
on it,
why would we set ourselves up
we're not setting ourselves up for anything.
for not recording something?
So
You know what I mean?
the issue, I do understand what you're saying, but I think you're also going way beyond the scope of what the Finance Committee's concerns are here, to be honest with you.
Well, no, in all due respect and point of order, I stated early on that I think there's an impact to the budget. So we're staying within the scope of what we're.
I'm just speaking to what Mr. Consilvio was speaking.
Well, no, but I took your
I would
comment
not,
as
I'm
an
not
over-
commenting to what the entire board was saying, so I think that's,
Okay.
I apologize if that's how it was
Thank you.
construed. But what I'm saying is, when I say decision-making boards, we're talking about financial decisions, people that make, contracts, agreements, whatever it might be. If there is a subcommittee, so for instance, the zoning board review committee, that's a subcommittee. That's not necessarily a decision-making board in a sense that it's going to be making recommendations, but it's not going to be making final decisions. So those boards would not be recorded. That would remain the same. The only two boards that were going to be added to this is going to be the water department and the sewer department. Those are the only two boards that make decisions that currently are not recorded. So that's why I wanted to make sure, speaking to the first gentleman's problem, I can tell he's not really happy with it. But quite frankly, it's time for transparency at the water department. They had a $6,000 ethics violation that we paid for. So it's time to start putting some transparency onto the water department. And the first step to do that is to get this through town meeting. If we get this through town meeting, the Attorney General's office can tell us if we have the authority over them or not. And then we can take it from there. So that's really what the purpose of this is.
Well, then I think I would still agree to the motion to defer it, because your article states to see that if town meeting will vote to approve the that all decision-making boards, and you just clearly said that you're focusing in on the Auburn Water Department. So if your warrant
Well, it's the only
article
two that are
had-
left.
But if your warrant article had just stated one board, it might have been more palatable, but because it does state all boards, that's really the primary, as a decision-making body, we have a whole town that we have to worry about, not just select circles. And so because this does say all decision-making boards, and we have an impeccable cable group that just for nothing marches around this town day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, volunteering and giving so much of themselves already, that there would be an impact on it financially, because they would be expected. And that's why it's saying all boards. There's other boards forming. We just had a conversation at our finance committee a couple of weeks ago about other boards that are forming now and people that are in hybrid roles so that they can support those boards.
What other boards are forming?
Well, one of them's an economic development committee. Another, there are others. I mean, just open up your quarterly newsletter from the town and everything. There's constant activity going on in the town now.
And again, if they're not decision-making boards, if they're recommendation-making boards, they're not going to be recorded.
Yeah, but I think that's left for interpretation, sir.
It's not left to interpretation, because all we're doing is changing the current bylaw. So the current bylaw states every board can make its decision on whether or not it's going to be recorded or not. All we're doing is eliminating that. Boards will no longer have that choice. If they're a decision-making board, they're going to be recorded. That's it.
Okay. I think you've given the explanation of that. If we have specific questions, Andrew?
I'm confused as well. I mean, are we talking about the water commission, or are we talking about all boards? I mean, I agree, it's broad scoped.
But I think that's up for town meeting to interpret.
I guess.
For our purposes,
I'm
sorry.
No, no, good.
So,
Yeah.
on one sense, I understand in the traditional sense to have a room like this that is wired with cable and to YouTube there's a cost to that. There's a cost to staff. There's a cost. But nowadays in technology, this laptop in front of me, which is doing in essence on a limited scale the same thing, I think it's worthy of discussion. But I think Mr. Tatro would probably be, like we started right at the beginning, I think Mr. Tatro would be the one to make that argument in front of, or presentation rather, not argument.
I'm going to certainly make myself available to the town meeting. I'm not a town meeting member, so whether or not they would
Not sure-
accept
not
my
sure how that'll
invitation, I
work
have no
as,
idea.
Rules of order, whether
But,
they would
I mean, that's the purpose of it, transparency.
You did make a motion to defer to the petitioner?
No, I made a motion not to recommend.
Not to recommend. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second not to recommend article number 36. All in favor of that one? Okay. George, defer. Is it no?
Yeah, I would not vote yes on it.
So we had,
I would have just taken no position. I mean,
right.
it makes sense for transparency. I mean, again, it's really up to the town, meeting voters anyway. But transparency, I think, especially, I would bring up those 2 points if you do talk at town meeting about it's only adding 2 boards, or maybe we list out which boards.
They actually are doing that. The clerk's office is looking into it to make sure.
And then bring up
That was
that
all part of.
$6,000.
Sorry, there was 2 Board of Selectmen meeting last week, one Thursday, then the Monday which was the first one, that was discussed at that point too, and all the financial impacts of these types of things, so
Yeah, and
it was brought up.
I would just say, bringing up that $6,000 violation, that's an example of saving money when we're also maybe spending a little, so that kind of offsets there.
One way or the other, we have to start cracking the egg and finding out what's going on in the water department. Bottom line is, so it starts somewhere, has to start somewhere. Whether or not this passes or not, that's welcome, that's fine, I understand, that's part of the process. I'll just go to the next thing. But at some point or another, we have to start having accountability in our water department. So it starts somewhere.
Okay. Thank you on Article 36. If you want, Mr. Tatro, we'll jump ahead just while you're here. Nope, apparently not. You do have one more. I think.
Number 38.
Yeah, 38.
38.
Multi-unit apartment. That one get withdrawn?
You have to pull it if you want to cancel it.
Oh, I didn't realize, I honestly did not realize that. Okay. Go ahead.
You wouldn't be able to withdraw with us, but.
I thought, because quite honestly, it was discussed at the selectmen's meeting and they voted, again, I thought not to move it in favor, so I thought that was actually going to kill it, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
I didn't even know I was going to
I
discuss
don't
that
think I
one.
have the authority to kill it because it's a citizen's petition.
Okay, honestly, like I said, this is the first time I've done this, so I really didn't know, to tell you the truth.
So that's easy.
So I'll just make a motion right now to not take a position. This does not have a direct financial impact, much like the
Second.
others.
Motion and a second on number 30, Article number 38, to
Did not
take no
take a
position.
right.
All in favor?
Aye.
We good?
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number 37, we do have, I believe, one or two people online that were, the petitioner, I think Mohammed Mustafa is online. And I think, Danielle was the other party was, as well?
Yes.
Saeed Tahir?
Dr. Said?
Dr. Saeed, I'm sorry, let me just get back to number
37.
37. Okay, so this is the establishment of a new cemetery. Any questions relative to this one?
So I will just say I am in support of this, but since it does not have a financial impact on the town, to be consistent with the position that I've taken others, I will make a move not to take a position at this time.
Second.
Any questions before we take, we've got a motion and a second to take no position on this one. We discussed it. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen, for standing by and waiting online, but at this point, we're going to take no position on this one, and you'll be able to, it'll be presented at town meeting. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I know this one.
Okay, number 39. So, did you want to state anything to this, because you are the petitioner on this one, do you want?
I mean, I think the
Well,
conversation we
relative
just
to the committee,
had.
are you recusing yourself relative to the discussion relative to this? Did you want to take did you want to present on it?
I mean, I can go stand over there if you want to discuss it.
Do that just for optics.
Just
just-
for decorum.
Thank you.
And I will with, obviously, I vote.
Typically, I'll just allow you to, just a brief summary of what this Article 39 entails, and,
Well, I think the discussion we just had about doing tax abatements for seniors, veterans, and small businesses sort of shows why it would make more sense. Because that's it's so complicated. Who do you pick? Who gets better favoritism or not favoritism, or who has bigger needs than the other person? I think property tax simply is it belongs in the dustpan of history. It simply doesn't work. We're trying to guess what a property is worth based on the person who's living in it. It's not worth what the market says because they're just trying to survive day to day. And then you get the other problems of the town could take their property for not paying their taxes. Like all of this stuff would just go away. It would just make life much more simple. We have 3 levels of government. We have 3 different types of taxes. We have an income tax, a sales tax, and a property tax. And we just simplify stuff. Very, like the Rose said, simplify, simplify. That's really all we're trying to do. It's not going to change the revenue. We're still going to have to come up with a complicated formula of how to get the $68 million. But you can do a progressive thing in the income tax that you cannot ever possibly do through a property tax. And that's really the simplest way to explain it.
Any questions relative to Article 39?
Many. But I will save them for another day.
Do we have any, if we have no questions, do we have a motion relative to Article 39?
So, I guess, I don't even know how to approach this from a finance committee perspective. I think it's pretty obvious that it would have an impact on budget, both because certain departments, in essence, would be dissolved and other departments would need to be created. I think it also, despite the, again, attempt to sort of talk about this as a revenue neutral idea, eliminating the tax base does eliminate all of the, all of our ability to collect property taxes. So I feel like we sort of have to take a position on it. And my own position is, while I think that you are probably correct, this would in the end state be a fairer and more reasonable way to do it. I don't think that we are in a position to be able to do it.
That is not what this article is doing.
And that's fair.
The
You
article
are simply asking for
is simply
the ability to talk to
because
the
the State House is not going to do anything without a little bit of clamoring on the side of the citizens. And if one town the State House is 140 people. The town meeting is, 100 and something. So if 110 people say, we would like to consider drastically looking at this problem, the State House has to pay attention because we are as many numbers as the State House.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry. I'm still,
Yeah, that's
I'm trying to digest it. myself.
I want to just make an observation that this is a bold move, and I would want to mention that we have, I think, 351 or 355 communities here in the state of Massachusetts that all pay into, and the taxes into the state. And it's a formal process done through an audit, and there's a recap sheet. And a lot of times it also delineates a lot of the resources that come back to the states. There's such a large amount of formulaic, ingrained, and the system itself is just so complex that, I merit you on thinking of it. But I would also say that some people can live in a $3 million home because they choose to. And some people that have more money than, whoever could have a $40,000 home. So the minute that person has worked hard to get their millions and has a $40,000 home and is living very quietly, and the minute that you come for their pocketbook, I could assure you. So I think my observation is that the last thought I'll make, and then I can sum it up, is I believe in 1984, the State Justice Department blessed real estate on a cash basis as true value. So that means that our valuations, as they're merited, if my home is assessed or worth at $300,000, let's say, and that's actual cash value, and that's how valuations and assessments and comparisons and everything get done. When you get into areas of income, never mind the pension systems and the IRAs and the whole tax code, because, let's just face it, there are people out there that make tons of money and they're constantly in the news because they've evaded paying any taxes. So I would just caution you that though it's impressive that you're looking for an alternative as someone in finance, I would be concerned because you can really, when you're looking at individuals' income, you're looking at their own personal wealth. And that has been a thorn in the average person's side because people that work hard and earn and make a good living deserve every right to have the wealth that they've consumed and earned. That's my take. If I've sent myself through school and college and I've studied and I was in the right place at the right time and my value is $30 billion, I'm already being punished for being that rich. There's other laws at the state level that do that. And there's constant tug of war between income and revenue sources for personal income. So I think that though it's a different approach, I don't know that you're going to find, you're still going to have to categorize people. You're going to have to say people make between 50 and 125,000, people that make between 175 and 300,000, people that make between 375. And now do we talk about investment? You know what I'm saying?
We're doing all of this already. We're just doing it twice.
Well,
We
no,
already
not
have an
necessarily.
income tax.
Not
We have a state
necessarily.
income tax, we have a federal income tax. In most states, there's an income tax. We're doing all of this already.
But Massachusetts
and
already
it is.
has,
It's a-
Massachusetts already has a state tax. And everybody across the board, whether they make a lot of money or they don't make very much money, have to pay the state tax.
But
So that's not fair.
The question, I'm not trying to give, they made the same arguments, well, you couldn't get rid of the king. Because, the king made all the decisions, the king knew everything, the king had the administration in place. You couldn't, the world would fall apart, the mob would not be ruling. You're making the same exact argument made 250 years ago. Exactly.
Well, in all
We can make
fairness,
changes.
250 years later, it has, and I don't want to take up time, I just wanted to express my thoughts. 250 years later, we're no further ahead. And so I would just say that you've got a very complex, very formulaic methodology in place that is running a nation. So thank you. I commend you on putting it forward.
I certainly understand. It is very complicated. This is why a simple solution sometimes is the best solution for complicated things.
So since, no, does anyone else have something? Sorry.
I would just say, like Patrick said, we all, respect the efforts. You say it's simple, it doesn't, implementing it going forward doesn't sound like it would be that simple to do. Like even if this passes, who would be in charge of it in the town? Just figuring all that out and then making all the changes. And, change is scary to most
This
people.
would take years to
Yeah.
execute. I mean, this is.
And change is
I would have to, presumably, I'd be on the committee.
So is your intent to get a subcommittee or to bring it to the town's attention through town meeting and then have a group of people try to pursue it?
Yeah, we'd have to have a committee, and we would have to, so the bigger issue here is sort of like, the pause that happened at our last finance meeting, when I said, can we look at the Excel files? And there was that, well, guess what? You do that with the Department of Insurance and the Department of Revenue, they'll be like, what? You're not allowed in here. You're not allowed to ask us questions. You're not allowed to make suggestions on how we operate the system. We've already decided. It's 250 years old. There's nothing shy. I realize there was nothing shy about this proposal. However, if you knew more about how I understand the economy, it makes perfect sense that you have to change something at the lowest level. You have to change something at the town level if you're going to have any, what they're doing in Washington, the tariffs could be 100%. Oh, no, we're not going to have any tariffs today. Now for 90, wow, what are they doing, right? They're not we're not going to get any relief from Washington, not for ever.
Yeah, I think we're going to stick to it. We're going to stick to our warrant.
So anyway, but all I'm saying is this will change the system. It'll take time, absolutely. But I can clear the path, but I have to have support. And that's really all I'm asking
I was
for.
just going to add to when I was talking that, kind of like Patrick said, you go after people's money. Like, I mean, with this, what if someone owned 5 properties in Auburn, but they rent them all out and they live somewhere else? So then,
That's just questions
can we
we have to
charge a
deal with.
resident of a different town on their income? Like, that would be a weird. And then, people making a lot of money here, they're making $250,000, and then, oh, I'm going to Charlton now. Or Sutton, anywhere else. It would scare those people away because they're paying more to live here.
I mean, we had the same problem. DJ's has 10 stores.
Hold on, Steve. To George's point, I agree with you. As my family started to get older, my teenage children, at some point, I think they're going to end up coming home, right? They'll probably, until they can save enough money to put a down payment on a house or afford rent. And now my household is getting charged for myself, my wife, and, adult children who are back home where other people may not be reporting that, or you mentioned rental, landlords, how we.
Right. How do you go after someone?
It's very complicated, and I do applaud you, Steve. You do think, of anybody I've met, think outside the box. I just don't know that exactly how this is phrased, how we even take really a true position on it, or what town meeting's going to sort of do with it. But I do applaud you, Steve. I love the way you're thinking and being creative.
So I will say, given that this does not attempt to change the tax base, it just attempts to give us the ability to discuss it with the state legislature, I don't think that there is a direct financial impact based on the wording of this exact article. So I will move that we take no position at this time.
Okay, we have a motion to take no position on Article number 39. We have a second? Second. Jordan, a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Number 2 for Steve.
Number 2, Article 40. Summary is to explore forming a publicly owned community development financial institute. Want to give us the
So that's a much bigger thing. Because, that actually could have, that could actually be done much quicker, ironically. Although it would still take legal changes at the State House. Because CDFIs right now come out of the US Treasury, and they only work on, and they generally do like small projects. There's like a half a dozen of them in Worcester, there's one in Charlton, I think there was one in, there's not a lot of CDFIs generically. There's at least, there's at least one in the state of Massachusetts, because they've done like 780 projects. None of them are suggesting that we pool our money together and sort of self-insure like we do with the health insurance. So the town is self-insuring health insurance. So the same logic of that you would save money, that you can administer it better, we could be doing the same thing with property insurance. Instead of shipping it to, Hartford or New York City or wherever we're shipping the money to, we keep the money here and the same profits that the insurance company's making. This would also require a lot of changes from the State House. And I'm sure the Department of Insurance would be wondering what the heck is going on. But, if they could regulate the industry, why couldn't they regulate a town doing the same exact thing that the industry does? It's no different than a light company. Holden has a light company, Shrewsbury has a light company. It's not that hard to run a business. We have enterprise accounts, they're just running a business. So it's not really as crazy or as difficult as an idea as it sounds, but it does change the flow. And that same instrument, and I don't know if they do them in Massachusetts or not, but that same instrument also works as a credit union. So we could, in fact, be creating our own public bank. Public banks exist in the country. I don't know, but I don't think we have any in Massachusetts. So this would be, in effect, the first public bank. But that would still be at a different level of maturity than we would start at. The thing to start at would be simply to look at, insuring people's real estate. And so that when there's a problem, when there's a problem with real estate, you're hiring local people to fix it. So why are you going to Hartford or New York or wherever to get the money to fix it? The insurance company isn't paying for anything. The subscribers are paying for it all. Every business is just cost shifting, right? Like we tax the taxpayer is going to cost shift. The business is going to get money and cost shift it from their customers. I mean, the whole economy is just about cost shifting. But if you look at it in terms of the percentages and where the money is flowing, the money is trickling up, first of all, but it's also trickling into the banks and the insurance companies primarily. Hence why they dominate every skyline. So this is definitely a David versus Goliath idea for the town to take on the skyscrapers, essentially.
Okay. Questions relative to this one? I think, Andrew?
So you're proposing kind of like we have the town aggregate for power, your people would opt into this program and
Exactly.
would hopefully see the benefit of lower insurance premiums by bonding everybody together as a town for a better rate. That's what you're getting at? Okay.
Additional questions?
I'll just say, for the same reason as the last one, since this is really just requesting that the town seek approval from the state legislature, I don't think that there's a direct financial impact in the wording of this article, and therefore I would move that we take no position at this time.
Okay, we have a motion to take no position on Article number 40. Second, all in favor?
Aye. You just put more committees on your plate, Steve.
I want to say something about 49, because there is a cost implication.
Okay. Number 41 is a lengthy one. It's titled Comprehensive Independent Audit of the Town of Auburn.
I just want to mention on Article 41 that usually, in my experience as a seasoned professional of many decades who is retired in finance, that the only time I ever saw comprehensive audit was at the time of negligence. So I want to make first and foremost an observation that negligence means that which became public record years ago when the vocational school system got compromised and $13 million was stolen by an internal treasurer. And even then, the audit was confined to just the elements surrounding the embezzlement. So when you're talking about doing a comprehensive independent audit, because first and foremost, our records are audited every year. And we've been very fortunate as a finance committee to have decades of incredible finance done in this town. So we're already going to be paying for an audit next year. We've had audits that could come around. We show we've never had anything negligent or a spotlight put on us. And so I question because this would be, let's price them anywhere from 150 to, I can put an amount on this warrant article without it even having an amount, because an independent audit's going to probably cost anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000. And then some, and it does say, I made sure before I spoke, but on one of them, it does say that the scope of the proposed audit is intentionally broad and comprehensive. So therefore, without any reason to question what needs to be done or having a reason for questioning negligence, I would vote that we're not in support of this article, because as a finance board, I would say that if some of these things need to be addressed, that they should be addressed at the annual audits and they should be compartmentalized and then brought back to the public. But to just outright do an independent audit out of the blue, it's unheard of. I've never heard of something like this. That's all I wanted to mention.
Additional comments on this one?
I'll just point out that there was a discussion earlier about the water department and some funds that were I'm not even sure if it was funds were actually expended, it was more of a conflict of interest. But things do get caught, and I agree with Patrick that this might be, chasing a gnat with a sledgehammer kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that, and I don't think there's been any indication, there is a blank line that the town hereby appropriates the sum of, and it's a blank, it says placeholder in the warrant article. Do we have any indication that there is a number coming for that?
I just want to give some additional information. I have actually contacted a couple of firms, and I've sent a copy of this citizens petition to them. I just want them to give me a general estimate of what we would be talking about here. So I am hoping to have at least one quote, if not multiple quotes on this. And I would agree with you. I think we're talking a very large number.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, yeah.
Just to let you know, on Monday, April 14th, at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, the audit firm that we use, Scanlon and Associates, will be there to present the fiscal 2024 annual audit. And I have asked them to give a little bit more explanation about what an audit does, what it reports, just so that everyone can kind of hear about that as well.
I mean, I'm all in favor of, transparency and open books and let people see. We televise these meetings, we go over line by line on things. But there is a potential significant cost to this in this, that's my concern on this one, without a number. And do we believe we might have a number prior to? Has there been any indication from the petitioner that we'll have a number to put in there before this is presented to town meeting? Or
Chair, if I could, I'm actually doing the research on this, so I am hoping to have.
no, not your number, the petitioner.
The petitioner.
Their article. I'm asking-
Petitioner should be putting a number in there.
The petitioner has to add a number to this article, and if they don't have a number to place in, then I don't think it's,
It's full. It's a whole warrant, right? I don't think, if there's no number in there being supplied by the person or the petitioner, then I would say that's an incomplete warrant.
or at least, it certainly dictates, I think, the position I would be leaning towards relative to it. And it's not against audits, it's not against transparency, it's against the fact that there is a blank in there. We have blanks on the three from the school department, but we've been told by the school department that we would have them by the next meeting, therefore we've pushed it off to before the, discussed before the meeting. On this one, I don't know that we have that same.
I think in that case, we'd probably at least want to push it off and let the petitioner know that, and then we can always take a position on that. We're going to be at that meeting anyways, right? So, I mean, I don't disagree that this is a large undertaking that I don't know that would be willing to put that money towards. But I think in the interest of treating stuff the same that we have, it would probably behoove us to defer it to that meeting if, and let them get the opportunity to put that number together.
And if we did do that, we potentially would have the petitioner's number. I like the idea of giving them the opportunity of the additional time. And then we would have your comparison number. So if they came back and said, oh, it's only 20,000, and you came back and said,
Yeah.
I reached out to three firms and the starting point is 200,000, you could gauge that number as well. And the basis for that number, I guess, so.
So I guess I make a motion to move or recommend.
We would take no position
no
and,
position and defer it to the meeting before the town meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on Article number 41 to take no position at this time and to discuss it at the meeting right before the town meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Somewhere under all
We
this.
have minutes.
We did have some minutes. If there's no questions relative to the minutes, everybody's received them.
And I have to abstain from voting for those because I wasn't here.
Patrick's abstaining.
We don't vote.
We're not voting on them, but we're voting. If you did have any questions, so we don't have those, we'll consider those accepted. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good, we're adjourned.